Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Mind Over, the podcast where teenagers ask athletes, artists, and creators one question: how do you build a stronger mindset? My name's Adrian. I created this podcast with my sister Charlotte and our friend Victoria. And as teenagers ourselves, we know what pressure, doubt, and fear feels like. So we decided to ask the people who face them at the highest level. Today's guest started skating before she could even remember it. She had her first pair of skates at 15 months old, and by 17, she won the NHK Trophy champion. The night she won in Osaka, she jumped from 5th place to 1st, one of the fastest rises to a Grand Prix title in U.S. history. She was among the best skaters in the country, with the Olympics on the horizon. And then, at 19, she walked away. Not because of a fall, not because she had a bad season. She chose to stop on her own terms, at the top of her game. Today's guest is an elite athlete who has dedicated her life to her passion. She will tell us how to handle pressure at the highest level and what strength looks like when nobody's cheering and what it takes to define your own finish line. Ava Ziegler, welcome to Mind Over.
Thank you for that amazing introduction. I'm so happy to be on here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being part of this. It really means a lot. So let's just jump right in. So my first question for you is, you started skating as a little girl and, you trained at this level for over a decade. So discipline, is something that's important, and it's easy for a week. But how do you sustain discipline for, multiple years, and especially on the days that you didn't want to? And what would you tell a teenager who says, I'm just not as really a disciplined person?
I think after so many days of just disciplining yourself and forcing yourself to show up even when you don't want to, and even on the hardest days, you make yourself go and you make yourself work, because at the end of the day, you have one end goal. And if that's the most important thing to you and you love what you do, even when you don't, that's when discipline really just starts to show up. And it's not just something you wake up and you're like, oh, I want to be disciplined today. It's more of like, I have to be, or else I'm not making it.
Mm-hmm. And in your discipline, people see the 4 minutes on the ice. So what does a normal Tuesday look like for, an elite figure skater? And what time do you get up? How many hours on the ice are you staying there? And what happens when you're off the ice?
Mm-hmm. Every elite skater schedule is different, and it's more attuned to their body and what they can handle and the rink schedule. But I would usually wake up around 8, go to the gym, eat breakfast, come home, and then I would drive to the rink. I would get there around 11 o'clock. I would skate around 3 hours, with a break in between each session. And then I would be at the rink for about 6 to 7 hours, finishing up the day with off ice and strength and conditioning, and then drive an hour and a half home and wake up and do it again.
Okay. And before all your practices, do you have any superstitions that you need to do before you get on the ice, or is there something that, helps you lock in before compete days, or anything in particular?
So before I would compete, I would play Clash, and I wouldn't leave the locker room until I won a game. And I actually remember standing by the boards before a warm up, and my coach was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm not getting on the ice until I win a game." So that was my superstition. Other than that,
That's very
I tried.
That's very unique.
Yeah. I don't know where that stemmed from, but it kept my mind busy.
Ron tell you to do that?
He made me play it, but he didn't tell me to do that.
Oh my.
I kind of just won a game before a practice. I had a great practice, and I was like, yeah, that's the move.
Wow. Okay.
So,
my next question is, take us back to 2023, Osaka at the NHK Trophy. You're in 5th place after the short program. So what was going on in your head that night between the short program and the free skate?
before Osaka, I've always been overlooked as a figure skater. And when I came in 5th after my short, I was kind of just like shocked because it wasn't a 5th place performance. It was more of a 2nd or 3rd place performance. And politics plays a big role in that. And I remember my coach looking at me and saying, you have no option other than to do a perfect program and win, because even if you make a mistake, like that's just going to give them one more reason to keep overlooking you. So going into my free skate, that's all I thought. And I was like, I had no choice.
And in figure skating, like you're obviously alone on the ice. So how does that feel? You know, like the arena goes silent and then you have 9 judges scoring you on like every second of what you're doing. And, you know, in team sports, you can kind of share the weight and the anxiousness among your teammates, but like out there, it's all on you. So how do you train your mind and yourself to carry that pressure all alone?
I honestly just think of it as it's my time. Every time I stepped out onto the ice, it didn't matter what anyone thought. It was just, I was there to do my thing. I was there to do the best I could and to show up and love what I do. And at the end of the day, if I had critics disliking what I do on the ice, talking bad, this and that, or like whatever the judges thought, I was just like, it doesn't matter because I'm here. And I worked so hard to get to this moment where there could be one person in this rink watching me, or there could be thousands, and I would love every second of it.
Would you say that, like, was that something you ever struggled with in terms of like confidence, or and it got progressively better throughout your career, or were you always like, you know, taking the bull by the horns before every compete?
No, that's the one thing I didn't struggle with. I always loved an audience and I've always loved to perform. And I've done my best with some of the biggest arenas.
Um, Many athletes, you know, will say that high pressure and anxiety go hand in hand, and the more it matters, the more you're anxious you're going to get, and the anxiety itself becomes the problem. So I know you just said like you've always, you know, been confident in your shoes when you're, you know, going into like a short program or whatever it's going to be, but is there anything that you did to learn to step out of the cycle of, instead of being swallowed by your fear, you just adapt and, you know, show the best out of it?
Mhm. I've definitely had some terrible skates and short programs where it's like the next day I have my long and it's like you have to recover from that. And that's when a lot of doubt comes in and it's like, well, I can't do it. And I think over the years, that's when I learned that that self-talk isn't going to get me anywhere. And I need to just let go. I
Mm.
mean, I did pray a lot, which helped me really grow my confidence and trust in my future. And I know that's not for everyone, but it was definitely for me, and it helped me be secure with what's going to happen tomorrow and or in 10 years from now. Like, I'm going to be just fine.
That's interesting. That's the first time we've kind of heard of like religion being like, you know, important to manage our emotions. This
Mhm.
one's a little bit of a different question. It's about injuries. You dealt with a hip injury and had to skip your nationals to protect your season. How do you handle that scenario when your body is the one that you're fighting against?
I fought against my body for 6 years up until retirement. Um, I think not everyone can take the same approach as I did, and it takes a lot of mental strength to push through 6 years of injury. But I think when you're training through an injury, moderation is the most important part, especially when nobody's listening to you. Um, as I was training, I was told more and more and more and more and more, like you're faking it, because I won NHK in the midst of my injury. So even my parents were like, well, no. And I was like, yes. So I think my drive was what pushed me through injury and battling, like, do I show up? Do I not? Do I go to a doctor? and then I got that taken care of. I had 2 surgeries. After my first, I tried to come back. That's when I pulled out of nationals for the second time, because I felt a large pop during training. And yeah, I went into an emergency surgery a week and a half after that happened because I was 2 days from needing a full hip replacement. And then after that, I came back, I recovered fully, and I feel like
Did you
dealing
injure
with
yourself doing ice skating, or it's like,
I was born with hip dysplasia, which is shallow hip sockets. So my labrum in my hip kept getting stuck in between the 2 bones in my hip, which caused it to keep tearing. So I had a fracture, hematoma, and a completely torn off labrum.
wow,
So yeah,
that's insane.
dealing with all of that was a lot.
Okay. Wow. Well, that's pretty harsh, obviously, like having all those injuries. I'm kind of in awe because I don't know if I would even be able to step out on the ice again after something like that. But we're gonna move to different types of questions, more leading towards, failure, setbacks, and protecting your confidence. So you were added to the NHK Trophy at the last minute, and you turn that one chance into a title. So what does it take mentally for you to be ready for the day that, that opportunity finally shows up where you get to perform?
I think I built my confidence by trusting in my coaching team and my training. And I showed up knowing that this was my first really big competition. And what happens, happens. And I'm just going to go out on the ice, trust my training, trust my coaches, and do the best I can.
Hmm. You've mentioned that you had bad skates in the past, and obviously, like, also some bad short programs. So how do you stop, one bad performance turning into like the next bad performance and so on?
I think you just have to completely disassociate with the short program into the long program, and then you can really reflect once you're done competing. Because once you start dwelling on something, it takes a hold of like everything, your confidence, your mind, how you skate, like whether you notice it or not.
And when your confidence was at its lowest, what actually brought it back for you?
I think my coaches, when it was at its lowest, was at the end of my career. I've never really struggled heavily with confidence up until after my second surgery. I started competing again, and it was 2 years since I'd last competed. And I came off of such a high. So I was going back in with expectations from me and I feel like everyone else around me. And that's when my confidence started to be hindered because I felt like I just was starting from the beginning again. Like my programs were easier. I hadn't been trained and I was off the ice for basically 2 years. So after my first bad performance back, that's when I couldn't really dig myself out. And I'm still reflecting since it wasn't that long ago on what happened and how I could have built my confidence better.
Hmm.
Um, but that's kind of where it left off.
Um, when you fall in the middle of a program, I think you have about like maybe 2 seconds to get back up, keep performing with a smile on your face. What's going on in your head during those 2 seconds? Are you thinking about the judges, or are you just like, how do you even like keep up with, the performance that you have to make? 'Cause I'm sure like you obviously have like practiced specific things in mind for that
Mhm.
program. And like when you fall, maybe you're taking away from some of the things that you needed to do in those 2 seconds. So what's going through your head?
So you have less than 2 seconds. Like you fall, you better be right back up, like within not even half a second. Um, Once you fall, you get back up and you just pick up right where you left off as if it never even happened. I black out when I compete. I get off the ice and I'm like, okay, so did I do everything? But when I look back, I'm like, okay, well, if I don't remember falling, that must have been a good thing. Because if you're not, when you're in your program, you take one thing at a time and you focus at one thing at a time. So if I fall, I'm focused on getting back up. And then once I'm up, I'm like, okay, what's next? If that makes sense. So I try not to think too hard of the past in my program. I'm just thinking of whether it's a crossover, whether it's a rocker or turn or anything, what I'm doing in that moment and where my body's going is what I'm thinking about, not about what I did before or a previous mistake.
Okay, and keeping, the narrative and like mental lessons. Um, you retired at 19, weeks before the Olympic year, and you were at the top of your game. So just walk us through that decision. When did you know that you knew you had to take that decision to retire?
My very last competition was in Croatia, and I hadn't skated well before the competition. I didn't skate well in the competition, and I just remember being in the middle of my program. And this was when I knew, because I usually don't think in my program. I was just like, why do I do this? So obviously I finished. It wasn't a very good skate. It wasn't something I would look back and be proud of. And I get off the ice. Everything's normal. I get home. I'm still thinking, why do I do this? And I think there was a loss of passion and love for what I did due to pain still being in the picture and knowing that I wasn't going to make the Olympic team. And I think that was a very hard pill for me to swallow, especially since it's been my dream since I had a conscience. So I think I knew my body couldn't handle another 4 years of jumping. And I didn't want to go to nationals and not do my best. Because that's when you're in your home country, that's when your spotlight is there. And I wasn't mentally prepared to not do well. And that's when I knew I was just done.
Yeah. And, like you said, everybody knows and feels that our body needs training. But was there a specific moment in your career where you realized that our minds also needed training just like our bodies? Or was that something you learned later on in your career?
I was advised to work with a sports psychologist when I was around 15. I've always been the type of person to never be happy with my skill level or achievements. So my parents and coaching team really took it upon themselves to put me with a good sports psychiatrist to work on that and being appreciative for what I had and understanding the level I competed at. Because even now, I'm kind of just like, okay, and that's still something I'll work on. But she really helped me learn to be in the moment, to not think ahead, not think back. And I really think it's good for everyone who's an athlete. If they struggle mentally, that's something you're going to struggle with, whether it's depression, anxiety, or both, an eating disorder, like that comes with being an athlete. And I think learning and having the right team to support you and learning how to deal with that and overcome it is really important for everyone.
hmm This next question is a little bit cliche, but it's important because it helps us get more information on things that we could do to better ourselves. So, what do you think is your, single best piece of advice for someone that was maybe in your shoes, like a teenage skater dreaming of the next level?
I think my best advice would be to enjoy every single moment that you have, whether it's training or playing in a game or competing, because you never know when your last time could be, and you never know what tomorrow brings. So enjoy every second, work every day like it's going to be your last day on the field, the ice, or in the gym, or whatever it is that you do, because you really never know when it's going to be done.
hmm And looking back at your career now, think back to when you were at the top of your game and you were like full of passion. What do you think is your proudest accomplishment? Is there a particular title or maybe a just a small moment that pushed you past your own limits? Is there any specific difficulty you overcame and that you're very proud of?
Yeah, I think for the longest time, I've always been very quiet and I've always kind of just acted like I've never belonged. And I think throughout my career, it's taught me to break out of that shell and to have confidence with who I am. And if someone doesn't like you, that's okay. If you like yourself and you have a good group of people around you, that's all that matters.
Mm-hmm. And if you could go back and talk to yourself when you were 13 years old, what would you tell yourself?
That getting all of your triples isn't the end of the world. And everything's going to be okay in 10 years from now. 9 years from
What
now.
I tell myself. And if there's, this is the last question, but if there's a 15-year-old watching this video who's struggling, and hiding it, what would you say to them directly?
Either find someone you trust or talk to someone that you know won't judge you and just get everything out, whether it's a sports psychologist, a psychologist, your parents, a brother, a sister, a friend. If you keep hiding whatever you're going through, it's just going to eat at you until you get it out. And the sooner you get it out, the better you're going to feel. And I learned that the hard way many times. So get it out, love yourself, love what you do, and everything will be okay.
Actually, I have room for one more question. It says here, what deck did you use before your games in Clash?
I don't know their exact names, but Wizard, Hog Rider, the ones that shoot the arrows,
Mm-hmm.
Goblin Barrel, Mini P.E.K.K.A, and then Big P.E.K.K.A. Is that what it's called?
Oh my god. Okay. Well,
I didn't know what I was doing, but I won some games.
Well, I think we're gonna wrap it up here because that is an atrocious deck, unfortunately. But
Okay, sounds good.
It was very nice to meet you, Ava. It's very nice to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for your time. You know, your story is, really impressive. Obviously, battling all those injuries is something that few people on this planet can do. So, I wish you the best. And yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so nice to meet you.
Yep. Thank you.